Beer sales have, for the most part, gone flat in recent years, and for the first time ever, spirits have surpassed beer in market share. So how is the company that started the craft beer revolution evolving with today's consumer? Jim Koch is here to tell us. He's the founder and brewer of Samuel Adams. The consumer is evolving. What's happening with the beer market as it shrinks a little bit in market share, and to my previous point, spirits gain?
Well, we don't like to think of it as flat. That's a bad word to a brewer. Think of it as
pun intended.
Stable, very stable.
Yeah.
And what we are seeing is, people turning to flavor, and spirits obviously have a flavor intensity that you're not going to get maybe in a light beer, but what is growing in beer is the higher end. So more flavorful beers like Sam Adams remain popular.
How do you capture the young drinker, the young consumer that seems to be rather fickle? They moved on to seltzer, then on to tequila and other things.
Yeah, for us, we make a bunch of different Sam Adams, not only, the original, still my favorite, the Sam Adams Boston Lager, but we make 4 seasonal beers, so there's a different beer every season. It doesn't twist off.
Let's go, Jim. I know you have an opener on you.
Of course I have an opener.
Okay, proceed. I'll take that.
Okay.
And you continue with your answer.
And, we've innovated with things like Sam Adams Just the Haze, which is our first non-alcoholic beer, and it just got picked as the best non-alcoholic beer in America at the Great American Beer Festival.
I want to touch on that in a minute, but you are evolving one of the oldest beers in America, this one we have here, changing it for today's consumer. How so and why?
Yeah, this is Sam Adams Boston Lager remastered. People have asked me, well, why would you ever even touch anything? Cheers.
But you did. Why? And what did you do?
We basically have always evolved the recipe. I brewed it first in my kitchen in 1984, and it got picked as the best beer in America in 1985 and went on to win that for 4 years. So people are like, why would you change the best beer in America? How could you even make that better? But as a brewer, I've always believed there was a perfect Sam Adams Boston Lager out there. I just hadn't made it yet. So for 38 years, I've made tiny little tweaks, changing the harvest time of the hops, getting a custom malting of our barley that is smoother. And the latest change that we made, it makes a brighter, cleaner, easier drinking Sam Adams. It's a kind of geeky process, a traditional German brewing process called biological acidification, but it's like remastering a vinyl record, that you loved.
Okay.
It's the same music, the same band, the same instruments. We just took some of the hiss and the pop out of it.
The kids are out there saying, what in the heck is a record, Jim? You mentioned this non-alcoholic beer, and that has been one of the fastest growth areas in the entire beer industry. In fact, dramatically outpacing most beer sales. Why? What's behind that growth?
It's really a breakthrough as a brewer in some new techniques and some new equipment. I mean, the reason non-alcoholic beer really never sold much, other than the people who used up their quota and couldn't have alcohol anymore, was because it tasted crappy. And nobody wants to drink crappy beer, just avoid the alcohol. What has happened is, for us, we discovered a new process. It's a little complicated, but you can distill the alcohol out close to room temperature under a vacuum. So under a vacuum, you don't have to heat the beer or anything. The alcohol just kind of levitates out of the beer. We then take that alcohol, distill that, put all the beer flavors that came out with the ethanol back into the beer, and then touch up the product with some hop essences that complete the flavor. And all of a sudden, you've got a non-alcoholic beer that is every bit as good as its alcoholic counterpart.
So is dry January led into dry February and dry March, and does this have staying power?
I think it has staying power, and it's interesting. What we're finding is our drinkers for Sam Adams Just the Haze non-alcoholic are people who mostly drink beer. but every once in a while they want to change a pace, or I know for me, like I've just exercised and I really want a beer, but I don't want the alcohol right away. And it's just an amazing experience, like driving home, on the interstate, on the Mass Pike, going 60 miles an hour, drinking a beer, and not worried about getting pulled over.
Non-alcoholic only.
A non-alcoholic beer. It's a great
Boston Beer Company
experience.
has a lot of spaces. You also own Truly Seltzer. What do you see coming? Those sales have, and we can say, flattened off.
Yeah.
You're also in the cannabis space with a tea called Teapot that's only available in Canada. What's the future for both of those sectors?
Well, for the cannabis, that's really an experiment.
Okay.
It's up in Canada. We have federal licenses, so we're pretty sensitive about substances on bad lists.
So not coming here to the U.S.?
No, not until they're.
And Truly Seltzer, do you see a comeback for the hard seltzer category?
I think it's finding its place. It was one of those rocket ships that just took off faster than even light beer took off. It's the fastest growing category within the greater beer space in my lifetime. And now it's finding its place. So it's here to stay. When the growth starts again, nobody really knows.
Jim Koch, founder and brewer of Samuel Adams.
Cheers.
Great to have you here in
Glad
studio.
there's no laws against BUI. We're broadcasting under the influence.
That is a great point, Jim, as always.